So let's talk about Trump, the man, the myth, the Twitter legend. You know, the guy who treated diplomacy like it was a game of Monopoly with real world consequences. Trump's latest genius move in his ongoing saga of how to make enemies while looking cool involved giving China a massive tariff ultimatum. I mean, who needs actual policies when you can just throw a tantrum, right? He basically said, you want trade peace? Nah, we want trade war, baby, and we're gonna slap you with 50% tariffs. Deal with it. I know what you're thinking. Hold up, isn't that a bit extreme? Yeah, it is. But apparently when you have a gold tower, a reality TV show, and a Twitter account that should come with a warning label, extreme is just Tuesday. Now let's talk about China's response. Was it a slow burn of diplomatic calm, maybe a stern lecture about the importance of international relations? Nope. It was more like, ooh, you want to play? Here's 34% tariffs for your trouble. China didn't blink. They didn't sweat. They just casually tossed back tariffs like they were handing out candy at Halloween. Here's some sugar for your meltdown, America. Enjoy. At this point, it's less about international trade and more like watching two bullies squabble over who can be the bigger jerk. And while both of these economic giants are playing this ridiculous game of, I'm going to tax you harder than you tax me, who's getting screwed? That's right, you and me, the average consumer. You know, the person who just wanted to buy a toaster and ended up considering a second mortgage to afford a sandwich. But hey, at least the tariff war is good for business, right? Well, not exactly. See, while Trump's out here flexing tariffs like it's a bodybuilding competition, the people suffering aren't just the ones buying overpriced bread. Oh no, it's all of the global supply chains that are screeching to a halt. The supply chain, my friend, is basically the heart of the economy. When it's broken, the rest of the economy goes into cardiac arrest. Just ask any company trying to get basic parts to make your new iPhone poor, or your cheap plastic toys. Those things don't just appear in stores, someone's got to get them there. And that someone is feeling the weight of tariffs. So now, thanks to the greatest trade war ever, as Trump calls it, everything's more expensive. Cars, clothes, coffee, you name it. And we're all stuck paying for this diplomatic drama. But hey, at least we got a cool tweet out of it. Maybe in 30 years, historians will write about this and be like, yeah, that was the moment when the world economy got hit in the face with a giant angry Twitter storm. And let's not forget the side effects. Trump's tariff tantrum also made international allies scratch their heads. You know, countries that were already feeling like they were on thin ice with the US, now they're all like, hey, maybe we should start trading with someone else before we get stuck in this mess. Oh, and in case you missed it, Trump tried to smooth things over by meeting with Chinese officials. But instead of a diplomatic handshake, we got more tough talk and vague promises. You know how it goes when a kid gets caught stealing cookies. They don't really apologize, they just try to change the subject. So Trump's idea of negotiation is, let's talk tariffs, but not really. Let's talk future tariffs and maybe something will change in the next 4 years. But I'm definitely winning, trust me. So here's the takeaway from all this mess. The US and China are locked in a tariff war where the real battle is ego. The world's economy is stuck in the middle like a kid between two arguing parents. And consumers, yeah, we're the ones paying full price for this global drama. Meanwhile, Trump's probably sending out tweets like he's got the world's best trade strategy and all the rest of us are just lucky to be included in his art of the deal chapter. In the end, the tariffs may change, the trade war may shift, but one thing's for sure, the real winner in all of this is the self-proclaimed best negotiator ever, Trump. Because even when he loses, he wins. That's how this bizarre reality show works. Ah, the economy, everyone's favorite roller coaster. But this time, it's a special kind of ride, one where you're strapped in and there's a giant stagflation sign above your head, flashing like a warning on a bad date. For the uninitiated, let me break it down. Stagflation is when you mix two things that are bad on their own, but when you throw them together, it's like a nasty cocktail of economic misery. We're talking about high inflation, that thing that makes you look at your paycheck and laugh before buying a loaf of bread that costs as much as your rent, and high unemployment, meaning everyone's just chilling at home, wondering if it's too late to start a podcast about how everything is broken. But guess what? The cherry on top of this miserable cake is the low growth. That part where the economy's supposed to be cruising, but instead is just, well, stuck in traffic. So what do we get? A recession, but with extra chaos. Inflation is happening everywhere. Go to the grocery store and you'll notice something weird. You might go in thinking you're buying lunch for the week, but by the time you reach the register, you've accidentally signed up for an impromptu mortgage just to cover the cost of eggs. Eggs, the same thing you used to scramble with your leftover energy, and now apparently they're the luxury item in your fridge. Then there's the unemployment factor. Oh, it's a treat. More and more people are waking up to the reality that job hunting feels like dating in your 30s. Lots of rejection, very little enthusiasm, and most companies asking for more commitment than you're willing to give. Here's the thing, while the rich are figuring out how to buy islands, the average worker is struggling to get hired. And when they are hired, it's a gig economy where the only benefits are the free Wi-Fi at the coffee shop. So when the news says we're in recovery, just remember, recovery looks a lot like an emotional support blanket that no one can afford. But hey, some people are doing fine. The billionaires, of course, the guys who can afford to buy a yacht while the rest of us are figuring out how to not end up homeless in the next 3 years. Have you seen Elon Musk lately? The dude's buying up Twitter like it's on sale at a yard sale. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just trying to figure out if we can afford to eat at a restaurant without taking out a second mortgage. Meanwhile, the economy is like the world's worst buffet. At first, it looks promising, but then you realize everything's stale and way overpriced. You're holding your plate, eyeing the macaroni salad, wondering why you're here in the first place. What's worse, the system keeps saying, hey, it's fine, we're doing great, while the average person's bank account is taking a nosedive. Talk about a classic bait and switch. The government, oh, they've got ideas, plenty of them, like stimulus checks, which sound like a great idea until you realize that they're like those little chocolate samples you get at the grocery store. Sure, they're sweet, but they only last about 5 minutes before you're hungry again. And don't get me started on taxes, because who doesn't love paying 30% of their salary to a system that can barely fix a pothole? And as for interest rates, oh, they're climbing faster than a cat up a tree when it sees a dog. Sure, it's great if you're sitting on a mountain of savings, but if you're like the rest of us and just hoping your checking account doesn't hit negative before payday, it feels more like a personal attack. So, what does it all mean for the average person? Simple, buckle up, because no one really knows what's going to happen next. The economy could bounce back, or it could fall off a cliff and land in a pile of debt while wearing an I'm fine t-shirt. But one thing's for sure, stagflation is the new reality. You know, when everything gets expensive, no one's hiring, and you're left wondering if it's time to sell your kidneys on the black market just to make rent. All right, let's jump right into the next absurdity of the American political circus, Trump and Iran. Because what's a geopolitical crisis without a side of drama? And who better to add some spice than America's favorite former reality TV star turned president? So here's the deal. Trump, in all his wisdom, or lack thereof, decides to shake hands with Iran, the country he spent years calling the axis of evil, while simultaneously tweeting like an angry teenager. But now he wants to have some cozy direct talks about Iran's nuclear program. How? With all the finesse of a sledgehammer to a glass vase. This, my friends, is what we call diplomacy in the Trump era. Let's talk about your nukes, but also you can't actually make them. Okay, let's just nod, smile, and pretend everything's fine. Can you imagine being at that table? The Iranian officials are probably sitting there thinking, is this a negotiation, or are we on an episode of The Bachelor? What's with all the awkward silence and forced smiles? I mean, no one does awkward like Trump, right? Now let's talk about the actual nuclear talks. I'm sure there was some real deep diplomatic strategy going on here. Trump must have walked in with a super detailed plan, probably with charts and graphs and maybe even a PowerPoint presentation. Just kidding, he probably walked in with a Make America Great Again cap and a weirdly confident handshake. The problem is, Trump's strategy with Iran has always been a bit like a kid in a candy store. I want the nukes to stop, but I'm not really sure how to make that happen. Maybe I'll just tell them they can't build them and hope they listen. It's almost like trying to negotiate a ceasefire in a paintball match by yelling at the other team to stop shooting. Doesn't really work that way, buddy. Here's the kicker, though. While Trump's doing his strongman routine with Iran, the rest of the world is sitting there going, wait, what's happening? We just spent years trying to make peace with Iran, and now we're back to square one. It's like you've been following a long, complicated recipe to make a souffle, and then Trump walks in and dumps a bunch of hot sauce on it and calls it fusion cuisine. And let's not forget the international reaction. Everyone's trying to figure out what Trump even wants with Iran. Does he want to make a deal? Does he want to pretend he solved the problem without actually solving anything? Honestly, it's hard to tell. It's like watching a guy tell you he can fix your car, then spend hours on it only to realize he accidentally broke it even more. But hey, at least he looks good doing it, right? The deal Trump was aiming for was supposed to be historic. You know, the type of deal that goes down in history books, but instead it's more like, I told you not to build nukes, but let's pretend we're on the same page. Oh, and the fun part, Trump, in his infinite wisdom, declared that Iran won't build nukes under his watch. Trust me, I'm the best negotiator. No nukes for Iran. Okay, but isn't that like the bare minimum you'd expect from any world leader? Telling someone they shouldn't have nuclear weapons doesn't really sound like a groundbreaking negotiation tactic. It's more like, hey, don't rob the bank, and then acting like you're a hero when they listen. And then there's the political fallout. Trump's advisors, his enemies, his friends, his family, heck, even the guy at the local coffee shop are all wondering what exactly is going on. Was this a masterstroke of diplomacy or just another attempt at the art of the deal that ended up looking more like the art of the disaster? The truth is, Trump's approach to foreign policy was never about substance. It was about style. It's like watching a fashion show where no one's wearing clothes, but the lights are flashing. Sure, it looks good for a second, but when the show's over, you realize the entire thing was just a big, empty spectacle.